Hello. Thanks for joining the live. Hello. How are you doing today? Thank you for joining the live. Hope you all are having a good day. Hello, Mumu. Thank you for joining the live. Happy Easter. Happy Resurrection Day. Scouts, thank you for joining. Thank you. Thank you. You have a great day too. No, I'm not any. Hi, Matthew. No, I'm not Adventist. I'm not Baptist. I'm not any of that. I'm non-denominational. What is my channel about? It's about Jesus. It's about magnifying and glorifying Jesus. That's what my channel is about. I just, basically on my channel, I give my testimonies or I share my testimony. It's about, things that I've been through. I'm 51 years old, and I started this channel, I think, back in I think it was 2019. But at that time, I was still on Facebook, so I wasn't really, dedicated to this YouTube channel. But anyway, it was not until I moved here in Colorado is where, when I really started taking it pretty serious and everything, because we had, had a lot of things that took place in my life. So I just sort of, gave it more of my time, things like that. But yeah, it's mainly about Jesus Christ. I talk about, how good he's been to me and my children. I have 4 grown children. And I just talk about, different life situations I've had to endure and go through, which we all do. But I communicate through this channel how Jesus has helped me. Because if it had not been for him, I'd be lost, eternally lost. So I give him all the honor, the glory, and the praise. But that's what it's about. I just share my testimonies on here and things like that, okay? So thank you all for joining. I just pray that, everyone who's on here today, that they, if you do not know Jesus Christ, I pray you will get to know him before it's everlasting too late. It's high time for us to get our lives, in line with Jesus. No matter what you've been taught, none of that matters. What matters is that you invite the Lord into your heart, and he'll take it from there. There's no time to be, doing all this other stuff. Life is short. My husband passed away, late husband passed away in 2021. We all were very sick with COVID. And, we had no idea somebody was not going to survive. And I was real sick myself, but he had diabetes. So, it was a complication, of course. But, it was just his time to go. He was 49 years old. And he died right there in our living room back in Tennessee. And I'll never forget it. Because I went to go get him a drink of water. And I came back. He was dying. So life is short, y'all. It's short. And, we think we got all this time. I'm not trying to say, oh, I'm not speaking doom and gloom. I'm saying, life is beautiful. Life is everything, I guess, how we live it. But what I'm saying is that we have to have a relationship with Jesus. All this other stuff that we're doing, take it from me. Take it from me. It took my husband dying for me to get a relationship with Jesus. And now I have one. And I don't know what I was doing all them other years. I guess I was just spinning my wheels, I guess. I don't know. But I've always been in church. I've always been, you know, I knew about Jesus, but I did not have a relationship with him. And that matters. It really matters. It's more than Easter egg hunts. It's more than all of that. We have to have a relationship with him. Because, you know, something can happen to you. You here today, but, you know, we're not promised the next hour. So be mindful of that. Like I said, you know, I'm not coming on here trying to say, oh, you gonna die. And, you know, no, that's not what I'm saying. You'll die when it's your time. But I'm saying while you're living, live a life for Christ. That's what I'm saying. And that's what I try my best to do every single day. I try to help people. I try to encourage people. That's what this channel is about too. Encouraging others, you know, helping somebody else. You know, even though growing up and, you know, I didn't have a lot of help. Nobody really helped me. People were putting me down. People were, you know, what they say, dogging me out, slandering my name. But God kept me. He kept me for such a time as this, and I'm grateful. So I don't have any malice in my heart, you know, for nobody. I just love everybody. There's nobody in this world that you can put me in a room with that I can't get along with. You know, I've been on jobs and people have been mean to me, and I'm like, what is wrong? You know, what did I do to them? Did I meet them before this job? They just, and then God would allow me to get to know them. It wasn't me. It was, they had a, you know, they just, maybe they had a health condition. They were just irritated. You know, they didn't like the job, and it was sort of directed towards me. But that's what I'm saying. We always like to assume so we can have something to be mad about, but it's really nothing to be mad about. People, we all go through stuff, you know, and I can have a chip on my shoulder because my husband died. But why would I? You know, I could go around and say, well, I don't like nobody. Why would I do that? You know, I love everybody. You know, I go in grocery stores here. I go at gas stations. I just love people, y'all. I love people. I love talking to people. Because we all got a story. We all got a story to tell. And your story ain't better than mine. My story ain't better than yours. You know, we all here living on earth, and we need to, you know, that's what God wants us to have, a heart for one another. You know, quit spewing hate. You know, he don't want us to do that. You know, he wants us to love one another. That's what he wants us to do. So I wanted to talk about today, dysfunctional families. I looked up the word dysfunctional, and it says not operating normally or properly. And then I read, it went on to say it may manifest as poor communication, frequent conflict, emotional or physical abuse. And then the synonym for dysfunctional, it says broken, wounded. And I want to read this. I'm sorry, y'all. I forgot to read my scripture here. So Genesis, the 4th chapter, and I'm going to start with the 8th verse. Now Cain said to his brother Abel, let's go out to the field. And while they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, where is your brother Abel? I don't know, he replied. Am I my brother's keeper? The Lord said, what have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now you are under a curse and driven from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. So I read Genesis chapter 4, verses 8 through 11. So everybody, if you're familiar with the Bible stories, you know, of that particular story there, Cain and Abel. But I wanted to just talk about, are you in a dysfunctional family? And I was in one. I just want to talk about myself on here. Thank all of y'all for joining the live. I was in a dysfunctional family for most of my life. And I'm reading from my notes, y'all. That's what I'm looking down. But I'm free now. You know, there's so many things that I was taught and I was raised under. One of them was, I was always raised under the rule, do as I say, not as I do. I had parents where, they would tell me one thing, but then they would do something else, and then I would be like, I'm confused. I don't know what, do I do that or I don't do that. But, again, when we're children, I see this a lot now, on televisions, different channels, whatever. But that's what's going on now. Children are being raised under that, hand where you do as I say, but just because I'm drinking, just because I'm smoking, no, you don't do that, but I'm doing it, but you don't do it, And so the children, a lot of times that brings in rebellion, and that's where I started doing, even though I wasn't drinking or smoking. But when I got good and grown, I wanted to go out and have sex. I wanted to go out and go against, my parents, because even though I knew it was wrong, premarital sex, but I was like, I'm just tired of them. They get on my nerves. They didn't raise me the way I should have been raised. And my biological father was not in my life. So my mom, it was just her and my stepdad, which I feel like they didn't do the best. But they did that's what they knew. They did the best. I guess it was their best. They just didn't know how to do anything else. And it's okay. I forgive them for that. But like I said, I didn't raise my children like that. I raised my children so much differently than I was raised. So I want better for them. I want better. But one of the other things that I was raised around was addictions. I've always, grew up around uncles. It was mostly uncles that drank. They heavily drank. We would go to family reunions, and you just always see a red cup or a beer bottle. Some of them just had a beer bottle. They didn't care. But that's what I always was around. Smoking, whatever they smoking, they was always just smoking. And I knew I wasn't never attracted to that. Thankfully God didn't allow that to play a part in my life, but I was always around it. I don't care whoever house I would go over, that's what was going on. And like I said, I ignored it. I was around it all my life in teenage years, and they wouldn't stop me from going over their house. I still go over their house when I got grown and got my car, and I still go visit them. I didn't judge them by what they did, but I knew somehow it wasn't right. I knew that was not right what they were doing, but I was like, well, because they had children of their own, and we were just all laughing and, kikiing and stuff. But I was like, wow, what's going on here? Dysfunction, and it just keeps going on, and it passes down to their children, to the grandchildren, and then here I was a niece. So I would see that. And then, like I said, thankful to the Lord that it didn't, attach itself to me. Because it was never an interest for me, but I was doing other stuff. So see, I escaped that, but I was over there having sex before marriage. So, nothing was better than the other thing. But, and then also they were gambling. They were overworking. That was a big thing about, my family, and I'm talking about my family. My family, the men was always gone. They always working. Some of them was cheating, and then some of them was working. So it was always, out of the house, gone, working all these long hours. The woman worked too, but the man was out, that's one thing I can say that they all did. All my, family, men in my family, they always worked. That's one thing I can say. They always worked. The other thing I wanted to talk about is jealousy. Jealousy, y'all. I don't know if you have this in your family. Maybe I'm just talking about myself. But jealousy is around you more than you realize. You got people right around you that are jealous silently jealous of you. And they want to do what you doing. They want what you got. And, you never hear them say anything, whatever. You tell them some good news, dysfunction. You tell them some good news and they say, yeah, that's good. But you got people, I never forget, before we moved here from Tennessee, I had a family member tell me, said, be mindful. Said, you got people praying against you. And I never understood, what they meant when they said that. I just took it with a grain of salt because I was like, what does that mean? No one had ever said that to me. But say be mindful of what you share, because you got people that wish you bad. And then once we, moved here, I was like, wow, God started revealing a lot of things to me. Family, dysfunctional family. That's what I'm talking about, y'all. Y'all, you can laugh it off, you can shrug it off, you can act like you got a blind eye to it, but I'm gonna tell you, it's existing right now. And that's what I was a part of for so many years. I'm free now. God pulled me out of that mess. But what I'm saying is looked upon as funny. It's looked upon as net, this how we are, this all we got, all that stuff. That's not true. It's not correct. You are a part of it's called a generational curse. That's what it's called. Look it up. That's what it's called. But I'm talking about dysfunctional family. I'm talking about all this stuff that goes on in families years and years and for generations. It repeats itself. Your grandmama did it. Your granddaddy did it. Now your family doing it. Then your children gonna do it. It just repeats itself. And nobody thinks anything's wrong with it, because it's always been a part of the family. It's in the family line. And see, that's what the devil wants us to be blinded by. What's wrong with drinking? What's wrong with having a little fun? What's wrong with sitting up under a tree talking about people? What's wrong with gossiping? What's wrong with talking about somebody even though I don't know really anything about them? All of that is, God is not pleased with that, y'all. I did it. I'm talking about me. I did it. I'm woman enough to get on here and say that. That's what I used to do. And I'm trying to help somebody today. You could say, well, what are you talking about? You can tell me to shut up, whatever you want to say. But I'm coming on here out of love, y'all, because, God wants me to help somebody. If it's just one person, I'm okay with that. But what I'm saying, we got to start asking the Lord to change us, to change the situation. But before he changes the situation, he going to change us first. But it's just a lot of stuff that we are dealing with and we are going through in our families. And we, like I said, we separate ourselves. We say, well, that's them. That's how it's always been. But God is able to do everything. He can do anything but fail. All we got to do is cry out to him and ask him to help us, help our family members. Pray for your family members. I don't care if you don't even like them. Pray for them. Ask the Lord to remove the dysfunction out of that family, and he'll do it. And he may remove you out of the family or away from the people who are acting like that, so he can deal with them, because that's what he did for me. But I want to go back to jealousy. So there are people in your family, that's what I dealt with. And I didn't know that but the Lord revealed this to me. So they were jealous of you. When my late husband was living, we had a pretty good life. We worked, we had good jobs there in Tennessee, nice cars, nice house, and how people make little sly remarks, y'all living the American dream, y'all doing this, doing that. But see, a lot of that was jealousy. And I'm like, but they had nice stuff too. So that's what I didn't understand. Why were they jealous of what we had? And I even remember a time where we had got a new car. Well, it really wasn't a new car, it was a used car. But then another family member had got a car, and we were complimenting them on their car, and they didn't even want us to compliment. They was like, and that's what I've always dealt with. Like, okay, no, you don't compliment me on what I got. And I'm like, who doesn't want somebody to say their car looked nice? But I was like, okay. So, me and my late husband, we just started, because we figured out what was going on, but we just started not even saying anything, But I still don't understand that. That didn't make sense to me. But again, people, more than that's a form of dysfunction, jealous, your own family. I want everybody. I want you, I pray you want me to succeed. I want everybody to win. I want everybody to get that nice job. I want everybody to ride good, look good, feel good. There's never been a time in my life where I say, I don't want them to make it. I want them to fail. I want them to lose their job. Who wants to say that? What type of person says that? But it's not even necessarily that people say it, it's what's in their heart. And I'm going to tell you something about Jesus. He knows our thoughts. So while you secretly hating on people and you jealous of people and whatever else you got going on secretly, he know it all. I want to remind someone about that. When you hating on people, we say hating, But I'm gonna say the mild version. I'm just gonna say jealous of them, you know. And there's no reason to be jealous of nobody. And when my late husband was living, we worked hard for what we had. But there were people around us, for some reason, thought we didn't deserve what we had, you know, because according to them, if they had anything to do with it, they didn't want us to have nothing nice, you know. But we worked real hard. We did. We worked very hard. He had a nice job. I had an okay job. But, you know, there were always comments about things that we had. And, you know, we were just minding our business, y'all. We were just trying to make it. Just trying to live, you know, raise our 4 children. Make sure they had food to eat, you know, place to sleep. That's all we were trying to do. But you had people jealous of you, you know. And even when I would, you know, so to speak, dumb down myself, you know, dim my light, you know, if you will, try to play myself down, or I would drive another car instead of a car, you know, just trying to drive the oldest car or something, you know, just trying to fit in. But God said, I didn't create you like that. You know, when he blesses us with stuff, he don't want us to do that. But that's what I've always lived around, y'all. People that had something to say about everything. It's jealousy. It was just jealousy. It's no other way to put it. But like I said, I've forgiven them. I continue to pray for them. I ask the Lord to help them in their situation, you know, because it's no reason for none of us to be jealous of nobody. Just like God blessed me, he can bless you, you know. And if somebody come up to me, or I know that, and God is my witness, I've had so many people, I be going through something, and back in Tennessee, you know, back in years ago, and somebody say, guess what? You know, I got approved for the house. And I'm just as happy for them. It's like I got the house or I got the car. You know, that's what type of heart I have. You know, but everybody ain't like that. You know, everybody ain't like that. Everybody, you know, like I said, they don't want to see you win. You know, let's just be honest. But that's a form of dysfunction. I want to talk about intimidation. This stemmed a lot from my mom. You know, I always felt like I wasn't good enough for her. You know, whenever I would go, even after I got married, grown, and, you know, got married and stuff, I just felt like I was never good enough. You know, I felt like I was be in the car trying to, you know, make sure my hair was right or whatever, you know, just trying to fit what she wanted me to be, and not realizing I was already who I needed to be. But, you know, she raised me as a single mom for 8 years until she met my stepfather. And she had to go through a lot of stuff, which, you know, that's her and God. She got to, you know, she had to deal with that. But what I'm saying is that she saw a lot of qualities in me that I feel like I feel like she was intimidated by. So, you know, of course, it was a flip thing, you know. Well, since she got, you know, she's talking about me, since I've raised her and I struggled with her, why she got more than I got, you know. So I got to say little stuff to her to make her feel some type of way. You know, that's when I had gained weight and stuff. And she say little snide remarks about my weight and, you know, just trying to intimidate me and make me feel some type of way. And y'all, it was so much mental abuse there. My mother, I'm talking about. And I love her. Please don't think I'm getting on her. I hate my mom. No, I love her. But it's time to tell the truth. It's time to be honest. You know, be honest about what you've gone through. Be honest about what you're going through. God can deliver you out of that situation. Pray for people who have intentionally and unintentionally tried to harm you. You know, pray for them. Just pray for them. Give it to God. He'll take care of that person or those people. But, you know, it's a form of release. When you talk about things and when you know, put them out there and say, you know, this is what happened, and you come to in agreement with it, God will take care of it. You're free of it. You're no longer held in bondage by that thing. You know, you're free. You're free. So please remember that. But that's one thing, you know, she always, like I said, it was really tough for me, you know, because even after here I am, I'm grown and I got my 4 children and, you know, living okay, pretty good, you know, whatever, and got a good husband, you know, whatever. And I go over her house and I leave feeling some type of way. But that was a form of, like I said, that's a form of dysfunction, you know. She wanted me to feel lesser than so she could put herself up above me, you know. You ain't who you think you are. And she used to say it sometimes. And when I go over to the house, I have to laugh about it, y'all, because, hey, I'm delivered from that mess. I thank you, Jesus, I'm delivered from it. I'm free. I'm free. But when I would go over to her, to the house to visit, I'd be just feeling so good. What you so happy about? Why you coming over here? What you trying to prove in that outfit? Just saying little stuff. And I'm like, I just came to visit, I just came to see how y'all was doing. But see, once again, people gotta put you down so they can be lifted up over you, So, but I thank Jesus. That's just not how I am, I see somebody who dress nice and they hair, whatever. I'm gonna compliment them. I never, ever say anything that's gonna hurt their feelings. I'm gonna never say anything that's gonna make them feel bad or cry or feel less than or nothing. When you come around me, I'm gonna uplift you. I'm gonna encourage you. My goal is that you walk away from me feeling way better than what you did when you came to me. I've had a lot of people come to me from work, at church, in the grocery store, whatever, and I'm always encouraging them. It's days where when we moved here, or while we've been here, because we got a place to live now. But when we were staying in a hotel and going from this, this, that, and the other, if you go back to my videos, I've shared so much stuff, testimonies, and the best is still yet to come. But we had to go through some stuff. But I still had joy. I still was encouraging people. I would see people that had nice homes they was going to. I never was jealous of them. I never was trying to put them down or say anything against what they had so I could make myself feel better because I ain't got what they, no, I never did that. I never did that. And I will never do that. But like I said, everybody's built different. We got to ask the Lord to come into our heart and to help us with a lot of things that we struggle with. I gotta have things that I deal with, but what I'm saying is that, we gotta come to agree. We gotta come in agreement with things that have kept us bound for years. Like I said, dysfunction is big in a lot of families. I know it ain't just my family. I know it ain't, because God told me it ain't. But what I'm saying is that we gotta start the first step is acknowledgement of what's going on. That's the first step. And I'm going to tell you how God propelled me out of Tennessee into Colorado. Part of it, I cried out to him and I said, Jesus, I won't change. Can you change things for me? I'm tired of living like this. And you say, well, what was wrong with how you was living? I was spiritually drained. I was so tired of all that mess that was going on. Because my eyes, during COVID, my eyes started opening. I saw how people didn't really like me. I saw how I seemed like I bothered them by even just asking how they was doing. I was just noticing a lot of stuff, y'all. I was noticing a lot of stuff. And see, the Lord reveals things to me in my dreams. He reveals a lot of stuff to me about people, different people, in my dreams. So I got like a bunch of dreams I've recorded. He allows me to remember things. Some of it has come to pass, some of it haven't. But what I'm saying is that, I just, at that particular time, I cried out. I told my late husband, this was in 2020. I said, don't you want to change? Ain't you tired of living like this? And he said, well, what's wrong? Because, on the outside, it looked like we had it going on. We had nice stuff, but I wasn't happy with that. Because like I said, I wasn't in my word. I wasn't close to Jesus. I was going to church, but I was just a look at me Christian. Look at me. I look good. I got my Bible. I got my nice heels on. Got my hair done. Got my makeup on. But I ain't changed nothing. Still got unforgiveness in my heart. Still hating. I was hating on people. Jealous of people. But it was in a way that I didn't even know. Not a mean way. But I had it in, God said, he showed it to me. He said, you did have it. You had a form of it in your heart. It was just different things that he revealed to me. It wasn't ugly. I thought it wasn't ugly, but he said it still was in your heart. It still was in your heart. And, a lot of times we don't realize how truly you know, how much things really do have a hold on us. You know, it's a lot of stuff we think we've brushed off, or, you know, well, I dealt with that, or that's gone away, but it's really not. You know, that's why we got to surrender everything to Jesus, and he'll take care of us. But y'all, I want to finish up because I don't want to be on here too long. But again, you know, I always felt like I wasn't good enough for my mama. You know, she, you know, I don't know. I always went to her. I never had that relationship where, you know, she, you know, say, hey, how you know, you have a good day today. I never had that, you know, and it's okay. It's okay, because I give my daughters that. I got two daughters and two sons. So I give them what I never had. But what I'm saying is that's dysfunction. And it did not. It stops with me. You know, I haven't passed that, and I'm not gonna pass that down to my children. But the other thing I want to talk about is abuse. So I was molested by some cousins in my family. You know, back when I was I was super young. So like maybe, I don't know, 9, 10, something like that. And so nothing has ever been said about it. You know, it's just, I've been around them, you know, we got older, we got whatever, because both of them are like a year or 2 years older than me. But that happened. Nobody ever told the parents. Nobody ever talked about it. You know, you just go on through your life. But I didn't realize that had a stronghold on my life. You know, as I became older, and I really believed that the devil was trying to use that to make me go a whole nother route. But God said, I got her protected. I got her covered. She covered by my holy blood. And so, you know, but that was a way that the enemy tried to come in and destroy my life. You know, it's so many other, you know, different situations, but that was one of the bigger ones, you know. And like I said, to this day, still talk to well, I don't talk to them now, but, you know, back when we were in Tennessee, we had family reunions. Nothing was ever, you know, ha ha ha, you know, nothing was ever mentioned about that. You know, nobody reported, nobody said nothing about it. It just happened, and it's like it didn't happen. But the Lord revealed to me, he said, keep praying for them. Keep praying for both of them. It was a girl and a boy. Keep praying, a young man and a young woman. Keep praying for them. That's what the Lord said. And that's what I continue to do that. I continue to do that. But so a lot of mental and physical abuse, you know, we've had to endure in our lives. And I don't know which one is better or which one is less. I don't think it is. I think they both weigh the same, it had the same weight. You know, people can say stuff to you, and it can have such a weight on you, and it can just, you know, make you feel some type of way. And then people, you know, of course, they can slap on you or hit on you, whatever. I don't think it's no other. I've heard people say, well, mental is more, but I feel like it's neither is more. They weigh the same. They weigh the same. Nobody should have to deal with that. Nobody. And like I said, that's something that molestation, I noticed that my late husband used to say all the time. When we would go to different family events and stuff, and he said, how come some of the older people, the men, looking at the young women in your family? And like I said, I never even, I kind of laugh it off, and I said, you know, what are you talking about? And he noticed it. He noticed it. And, you know, that's dysfunction, y'all. That's dysfunction. And like I said, I'm not coming on here. I'm not ragging my family. I love all of my family, but there's time. It comes a time where God wants us to pray. He wants us to pray, because somewhere down in the family line, somebody has opened up a demonic door. Somebody has done something and caused the enemy's hand to just go down through that family. That's what I'm talking about. That's the whole point of this life. You know, some kind of way the enemy has been let in. You know, he don't come in unless you let him in. So it's been an open door somewhere. And I'll never forget, I asked my mom about my grandfather. He's since passed away. But I asked her, I can't remember, y'all, what I asked her, but I remember sitting in her house, and I said, did granddad do, it was something I just really needed to know the answer to, because it had to do with what a lot of her and her siblings were dealing with. And I asked her, and she said, yeah, he did that. And she, you know, then she would just kind of randomly share stuff about how he was, because I didn't really have a, you know, I knew him a little bit, but I didn't have like a really strong relationship, because he lived in a whole nother state than we did. But, you know, you go see him from time to time, stuff like that. But mostly, of course, she knew him because that was her dad. She grew up around him and everything. But anyway, she said, yeah, she answered the question. I can't remember what it was, but whatever the question was, it had to do with what all of her siblings were dealing with. Like all of them had that common, it was like a common denominator. And when she said that, I was like, wow. And so she kind of looked at me like, what are you asking that for? But I was asking that because, again, that's dysfunction. And I can't remember. It had to do with some type of that care. It was just something they were dealing with. All of them dealt with that. I wish I can't even remember right now. It's been a little bit ago. But the answer was yeah. It was yes. And I was like, oh, and I kind of nodded my head. So I was like, that makes sense, So he passed that dysfunction down to his children. It's my whole point of sharing that. He passed it down to his children, and so then they they gonna give it to their children. It's just how it's just taught that way, And like I said, we ignore stuff like that. And I look at call me say whatever, but I look at the last family reunion that we had that I actually went to, and I used to be so big on family reunions, y'all. I was so. That was just a big deal for me because I said, oh, I'm going to post them pictures on Facebook. We're going to go. We're going to have fun. We're going to do let you slide. We're going to do all of this. But I look at all of that stuff so different now. And I'm going to tell you why. Because, family, I told a lot of my older family members, my aunts and stuff, before we moved from Tennessee. But I was telling them, I said, until we can truly come together, until we it's nothing wrong with coming together and having fun and, hugging and loving on each other, but we need to be praying for one another. And we need to make sure we're not jealous of one another. We need to make sure that we don't have any malice in our heart against one another, and we just need to be free of all of that. You got people that's grinning in your face and they can't stand your guts. And that's what the Lord showed me. He said, you were around. He said, I'm talking about myself. I was around people for years. I was telling a lady at church about this today, and she said it's going on in her family. And I said, yeah, it's going on in a lot of families, but it's being ignored. It's being ignored. Nobody want to talk about that. Nobody want to talk about that, because if you talk about that, the hard stuff, then you're going to have to talk about some more stuff that's going on. So again, that's where that molestation, it's a lot of that going on. Nobody wants to talk about that stuff. And like if I were to say right now, if I were to call up some people in my family and tell them what they child did to me, tell them what they family member did to me, which this was my family that did this, I'm crazy. They'll call me crazy. They'll call me, I'm just doing this because I'm dealing with grief. They'll make all these excuses, because they don't want to talk about it. That happened years ago. Y'all was children. That was nasty. Y'all shouldn't have been doing that. I didn't do nothing. This was done to me, but that's what I'm saying. Nobody wants to talk about, what really, let's get down and see what really happened. Don't nobody want to talk about that. Let's just, that happened years ago. Okay, shut up. Go sit down. I don't want to hear none of that. Because see, but if you truly want to talk about it and you truly in your word and you truly want to help somebody, well, I didn't, why didn't you come to me sooner? But everything's always brushed off. It's always brushed off and it's ignored. You got little children that's dealing with this stuff in these homes. Nobody's talking about it. Go sit down, go to bed, go shut up. Nobody want to hear what the baby got to tell them, and God see it all. But he gonna protect the children. He gonna protect them. But what I'm saying, y'all, is it's a lot of dysfunction going on. And take it from me. I've been a part of it for years, so I know what I'm talking about. This ain't nothing I read. This ain't nothing I Googled. This happened to me. I was in that mess, but God done brought me out of it. And he said, you've been delivered. You've been delivered from that foolishness. And it's, it's still going on, but he pulled me out of it, me and my children out of it. And I thank him every day for that. But again, how I got delivered out of it, I cried out to him. When I said that in the living room to my late husband, I said, don't you want to change? I said, it got to be more. It got to be something more. This can't be all it is to life. And he, he was just easygoing. He said, well, what's wrong? How are we living? I said, a lot. I said, I'm tired of living like this. And like I said, I knew God was tugging on me. I knew it was something else. But I didn't know that it was going to come by way of death. I didn't know my husband was going to have to die before I could see them more. I didn't know I was going to have to go through some stuff. I didn't know I was going to have to, I just didn't know all of that. You know, I just thought, well, you know, I'm looking at the pretty side of it. But he said, nah, you got to go through some stuff. Because see, I got to reveal to you people that you had up on a pedestal, people that you look so highly upon. I got to show them, I got to show you how they really were. And y'all, when you ask God to show you how people are, whether it's co-workers, it's family, it's whatever, you better be ready, because he gonna show you everything. He gonna show you everything. So I just wanted to come on here and talk about that. That's been in my spirit. The Lord wanted me to share that. It's for somebody. I don't know who. And it's encouragement to myself, because, again, there's a lot of dysfunction going on, y'all. A lot. And nobody want to talk about stuff like that. And I know it's uncomfortable, but I'm here for it. You know, it's nothing that has happened in my life that I'm ashamed to share anymore. I've lived under that for so long. And all the enemy, the devil was doing was making me feel condemned by that stuff, making me feel bad. Like, ooh, you know, when I got molested, you nasty, you know, you know, but the Lord allowed me to get married. The Lord allowed me not to go and be a lesbian or nothing like that. The enemy has tried so hard to attack me. I have been in car accidents, one after the other, never died. Of course, I'm still here. Be a slight injury. You know, I had a bad one in 1991, right after graduating from high school. Just a few weeks later, right hip got dislocated, went through the windshield. Two little young guys ran the red light, hit us head on, totaled the car. The car was totaled. They had to cut me out of the car. And that's why I got this on my eye. I went through the windshield glass. They thought I had lost my eye. God said, no, you got your eye. All this just flesh. All of this was just still here. So the mighty hand of God is working on my life. And the devil can try, he can do whatever he want to do. It ain't gonna never work. Because see, it's a calling on my life. I got work to do. I'm here to encourage somebody, and I pray that God reveal to you what you here for. We got work to do. It ain't just me, we all got work to do. And it ain't no time to be jealous of nobody. Ain't no time to be just going out here living from day to day, just doing, you know, humdrum stuff. Ask the Lord ask the Lord for change, is what I'm trying to say. And he'll give you change. You know, it may not be pretty, but he'll give you change. And he'll make a way. You know, but change, remember this. Change is a process. You know, we want change, you know, I want, and that's where I was at. When I cried out to him, that was 2016, 2017. I don't know what year that was. Well, no, it was 2020 when I said it to my late husband, because it was during COVID. But even before then, I had wrote in my journal that I wanted change. And see, God honors that. He you know, he's faithful. And he said, okay, you're going to get, your change is about to come. Your change is going to come in 2021. October 6th of 2021 is when my late husband died. And so he said, here you go, your change right here. So again, you know, God is sovereign. He's sovereign. I thank him for his sovereignty. But again, you know, we gotta want more, y'all. We gotta want more. It's more to life than just doing the same stuff year after year after year. You know, I'm you know, around people that don't even mean you no good. A lot of these people, they don't want better for themselves. How they gonna encourage you? They don't want you to do better. You know, and you say, well, I just don't want to be around them. Yeah, that's an option. But also, you know, the Lord wants you to pray for them. The Lord wants you to you know, go in prayer for them. You know, you know, they need, because some people not even praying for themselves. They're not even praying for themselves. So God wants you to pray for them. And that's what he tells me a lot of times. He said, just pray. He put somebody on my heart. Just pray for them. It'll be a family member. Somebody that probably don't even care for me. But I still pray for them. I do. I still pray for them. I don't know what's going on with them. But, you know, I pray for them because I want somebody to pray for me, you know. But I'm thankful. I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful that I'm alive. I'm thankful that God is allowing me to still be here. And with my children, my grandchildren, I'm just thankful, y'all. Yes, I'm a widow now, but it's okay because I know I'm going to remarry. I'm going to remarry. But in the meanwhile, I got to be obedient to Jesus. and do what he's told me to do. And that's coming on here, encouraging somebody, helping somebody. So as always, I pray you always hear Jesus speaking through me and not me. I just want him to shine through me. That's all I want. That's my prayer. And I pray you all have a beautiful, blessed Resurrection Day. And please remember that Jesus is the reason for everything. And if you don't know him, ask him to come into your heart. Surrender all to him. Lay it all at his feet. And he will come into your heart, and he will turn your whole situation around. He'll turn your whole life around. And you can't do it by yourself. You got to have Jesus to help you, okay? And like I said, take it from me. He saved my soul. He's helped me, y'all. I was literally in the clutches of the devil. The devil tried so hard to kill me. He wanted me to die when I had COVID. I was so sick. I couldn't even sit up. I've never been that sick in my life, And it was like a death hole was in that house. And I'm not exaggerating. The kids got sick, but they got better. And we couldn't understand why we couldn't get better. But the enemy was trying so hard to take me out. He didn't want me to be here and make it to Colorado. He didn't want me to, he wanted me to die. Because you know why? Because at that time, I was not right with Jesus. He wanted me to die. Because he said, come on, you're going to hell. You're going to hell. Come on to hell. Because my late husband, he was living a really, as far as I know, he was ready. Because he was going straight to heaven. But I was battling so much. It was just a lot of stuff. I had a lot of unforgiveness in my heart, things that had happened to me. And the Lord allowed me to go to my biological father and apologize to him for stuff. And it's just been a lot. I've shared a lot of this on this channel and other videos. But, y'all, it's real. I'm telling you, it's real. Heaven and hell is real. It's real. Both of those places are real. And, everybody say, well, I know I'm going to hell because I'm a good person. But you got to have a relationship with Jesus. You can't have no ugly stuff in your heart. You can't have hate in your heart. You can't have jealousy in your heart. If somebody done did something to you, stole money from you, gypped you out, whatever, you got to forgive them. You got to forgive them, y'all. Because you can't, none of that is going to be welcome in heaven. And you doing that down here, Jesus, that's not what he's about. So why would he allow you to come up there with that? We got to get it right down here. Ask the Lord to help you. Like I said, if you want change, remember change is a process. It's a process, and it's a big, take it from me, it's a big process because it don't feel good either. I miss, that stuff that we used to do, or I used to do back in Tennessee. I'll be honest, I was missing it. I don't miss it now. When we first moved here, I was like, ugh. I feel like my life is so boring now. I ain't sitting under a tree no more talking about nobody. I ain't eating barbecue no more because a lot of stuff I don't eat anymore. And God changed my diet. I just made a lot of changes, but good changes and stuff. But if they were to see me now, they'd be like, that girl crazy. What's wrong with that girl? She ain't who we remember. But I remember this. The lady I met here, an older lady. And I feel like she was an angel, but she said to me, we had went to a Bible study here and at the church we go to, and she said, that's when I was really still grieving, because I had to go through grief counseling and stuff when we first moved here. But she had mentioned to me, she said, when the next time they see you, they're not gonna recognize you. And I was like, what does she mean? Because when I left, I was wearing a wig and I had weave and stuff, braids and stuff. So I thought she was talking about physical appearance. And then the Lord revealed to me, he said, no, she's talking about spiritually. They're not going to recognize you. And so I was like, oh, that makes sense then, But she said, yeah, she said, God, she told me, she said, she spoke into my life. She said, God is changing you. Said he's making you over. And he is, y'all. He's stripping away so much dead stuff away from me. I was a walking dead person, spiritually dead, seriously, under all that wrong stuff. Just living. I was just living. I just thought what I was doing was right. I was in church every Sunday. I was married to a pastor's son. Thought I was just had it going on. And I was dying on the inside. I just was. I read my Bible at church, go tug it away when I get home, put it up in the bedroom on the stand, Then pick it back up again to the next Sunday. Some Sundays I couldn't find it because I hadn't read it all week. So I'd be late sometime going to church looking for the Bible. I was like, where's that Bible at? Like the Bible don't walked away. No, I hadn't read it and I couldn't remember where I put it last. Just to be honest. But in this season that I'm in now, God is wanting me to be honest. I don't know what he's asking you to do, but he's telling me to be honest. Get on here, tell the truth. Help somebody. That's what's wrong now. People want to lie. People want to make up stuff and make themselves look good, when they coming on these videos. Tell the truth. God already know what you done been through. I don't care what y'all know. I gladly tell you. But one thing I can say about being here in Colorado, I've shared so many, things that have happened to me, in my past, whatever. But I find the people that I'm sharing it with, they don't even care. They just want to talk about them. Like, you seem like you're a nice person. I was telling one lady, I said, yeah, I was nothing nice. You didn't want to know me back when we were in Tennessee, because I was selfish. I was telling the truth. And she said, I would have never thought that. I said, no, but I'm telling you. But she didn't want to hear that. That's my whole point. She didn't even care about how I used to be. She didn't care. She didn't want to hear that. But back in Tennessee, if you tell somebody, well, what did you used to do? What you mean? They want to know the details, because that's how I am. I want to, well, how were you? But she was like, I don't care. She said, I don't care. And that's why I know, y'all. I know that I know I'm in the place that I'm supposed to be. Yeah, my husband dead. Yeah, my children grown. But we still blessed. We still blessed. And I would not have it no other way. I'm so honest with y'all. Yeah, I cry at night in the midnight hour. I miss I was married to him for 21 years. I miss him so much. But I know where he at. And I know I'm going to see him again. I know for a fact I'm going to see him again now, because I got a relationship with Jesus. So I'm going to be where he at in heaven. But I'm thankful I am. Like I said, be careful. Be careful what you ask Jesus for, because he'll answer. He'll answer. And like I said, I prayed for change, and that's what he gave. He gave me change. But I didn't know that change was going to be death. Death was going to be involved in the change. I didn't know that. I thought, we going to have this beautiful, life. He going to, me and him going to grow old together and, things like that. But that's not how it happened. So I'm grateful. I really am. And I thank you all for commenting on the channel, on the last. I give all honor, glory, and praise to God. I thank you all for just being on here listening. And you're encouraged. I pray I'm always a blessing to you all, because you all are a blessing to me. But have a beautiful, blessed Resurrection Sunday. Go out and tell somebody you love them. Pray you were a blessing to somebody today. You are already blessed when God woke you up this morning. Bye-bye. Thank you all for listening, okay? I love you all with the love of Christ.